Hi everyone, welcome back to my next free tutorial Friday, and everybody seemed to love the sketchbook thing I did last week with Chris Ayers, which he's super inspirational. I'm glad you liked it. So in that same vein, we brought another sketchbook. Another great artist is here today, artist and designer. Darren Quach is with me, and this is his Cottonwood Arts sketchbook that he's brought, and we're going to get right into it, and he's going to tell us about it, and hopefully we're all going to get inspired. I know I am. When he showed me this book, I thought it was freaking awesome. Darren, it's so good.
Thanks.
I'm really excited to share it with everybody. And so first, tell everybody what that is.
That's just a chop that I got for my name, so just kind of a nice graphic that I like to use in my books.
It is nice, and it's always good to put your name in your sketchbook in case somebody loses it. Of course, you have to lose it in the right country. In this case. But so what we're going to do is that Darren draws in this little book, because the paper's so thick, he drew actually both sides of the page. But we're only going to show you one side of the page. So we're going to walk through his book, talk about drawing, talk about techniques. Let's start maybe we'll talk about the sketchbook first.
Yeah, so this is I believe it's the D3 size sketchbook from Cottonwood Arts. They kind of provided me with some samples. Really just like the quality of the heavyweight paper. Like I always have an issue of different types of papers where you try to draw with ink and you just get bleed through. But the paper held up pretty nice. It accepted all the ink. It accepted Sharpies. Markers.
So here's some of the tools that you're using.
Yeah.
So you're using what?
Very simple. It's just Copic markers. For this one, I'm just using Cools 1, 2, and 3, and Staedtlers. Just keeping it really simple. The Staedtlers are 0, 3, and 0, 7.
Okay.
So,
and I'll add a little link up there for Staedtler pens and markers, so you guys can find those if you want to try and replicate the same sort of things that Darren's doing in his sketchbook.
Oh, also sometimes I like using the brush pens as well. So
yeah, I love the brush pens.
Yeah.
So explain what you're doing here. I mean, I see in your sketchbook there's a lot of great little thumbnail sketches, and then there seems to be like a big one, right?
Yeah.
Are you searching it first before you commit to the larger sketch?
Yeah, I just really like to set down, like a really small gesture so that I can kind of understand the entire design, from just an impression. And then after that, it's just, translating it, spending a little bit more time to add a little bit more detail. I still like to keep these pretty loose, only because like my aim right here is not to render. These aren't, supposed to be finished pieces. They're just kind of, sketches that have enough to them that you can take them to Photoshop, render them up, build them out in Maya or whatever, any 3D package that you'd like. But yeah, like.
So you're like a big time game guy, right? You're 14 years now working in the industry, and
yeah. Started in 2000. My first company was for a small game company called Killer Game. That was in San Diego, and then did that for a couple of years. Moved up to Insomniac, and spent quite a bit of time there. Most recently, I finished up working on Hawken with the adhesive crew. So
great,
been really
great crew over there, great game.
Yeah.
So in your originally your education's Art Center Illustration.
Art Center Illustration.
Yeah.
It was like 2000.
Well, yeah. What do you think is the biggest difference that what you used to do in the illustration department, and what did you learn now? Because you're really working as a concept designer and artist, right? What have you learned in the sort of pipeline of creating video games that's maybe different from a traditional illustration experience?
The biggest change for me was to sort of realize what it's like working in a production environment as a staff artist. A lot of times, a lot of the artwork that you see, sort of advertised, they're basically really polished versions of, it's more or less marketing art. But a lot of times, like early on in my career, we were doing just production drawings that were, meant to convey an idea, solve a problem, and then just move on to the next problem. So a lot of time, like we weren't spending a lot of time rendering, I guess.
Right.
So it's a lot of communicating ideas. So
How do you come up with the shapes? I know this is going to be like one of the
Yeah.
most asked questions, right?
Yeah.
And I get that a lot too. It's like, it's always the design component that's the difficult. People can understand that, oh, I just have a black pen and I need to put some shapes down on a piece of paper, and
Right.
and it's kind of like an animal, so I could start with an animal, look at an animal, and that could generate, a robotic version of that. And I kind of get this, but how do you build and practice that and really apply that visual library to the sketches?
I think, like that question sort of ties into the game experience as well. A lot of times in games, like you're designing these things that are supposed to animate and move. So that's what I actually, try to think about, keep in mind a lot, is like how these things move, what the locomotion is going to be, and then just designing around that. And then, like the shapes, they sort of come on top of that. So if you imagine, like with the rigging skeleton, right? Like you might have like a stick man or something. Mm-hmm. Imagine that like
Yeah, I saw one
underneath.
I saw one a couple pages back. If I can, there.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I mean, this for me is, it's pretty important. Like, I mean, the shapes, that's what you're building. You're building stuff on top of that. So yeah, animation is really important. For me, gesture is also really important. Like a lot of, making sure that it has sort of a dynamic shape, or, that it can move in an interesting way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then what about did you just pick it up over the years of drawing mechs, the pivots and how things move and the clearances, how you build your knee joints and things and the offsets to make it look believable?
Yeah, I think that just takes repetition. You draw the same thing, enough times, I think it becomes easier
But
with time,
it's
I guess.
right, but it's repetition with a focused practice, right? You're looking,
Exactly.
you're practicing and trying to be very observant of those pivot points and clearances and how it contacts the ground.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not just, doing fan art, for instance.
Exactly. Yeah. Like for these, for each one of these, I guess, little designs or compositions, I'm thinking of, the way that the pieces sort of roughly fit into each other, and then how each compound piece fits into the larger whole, how the thing's eventually going to move.
Yeah, for me as a designer, I love seeing these little thinking sketches off to the side, either before you started the big ones or even while you were working on some things, then jump back over to here.
Exactly.
Oh, what would that look like in a side view? Right?
Yep.
So that ability is really important as a designer, to be able to go from view to view.
Exactly.
Yeah. And draw from any view that you want. Do you worry about when you're doing this is a personal sketchbook, and
Yes.
do you worry about speed at all when you're working in a book like this, or you just try to get, what are you searching for when you're drawing? Is it really trying to make beautiful drawings every page? Or are you searching for design, styling? Are you worried about time and productivity? What's like in the back of your mind driving the focus, or what's your motivation?
I guess for me,
doing a
time
book?
is always in the back of my mind, right? Like, I think with any one of these, I'm trying to come up with something that's, that interests me, or that I see potential in. But then at the same time, I don't want to, kind of labor over, like one drawing and make it the perfect thing. If it sparks an idea and if I see enough potential in it, then, we can maybe, develop it later on in the future. At the very least, I have it sort of like, in my catalog so that I can dig it up later on. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, just like with any gesture sketch, that's how I like to treat these as, they're just small ideas. There's some resolution. They're still pretty loose relatively, but hopefully they have enough of, of an interesting design that we can develop them later on.
I love this one. I love when you put the figures in there because it's just immediate scale,
Yeah.
right? And that's just really cool. And I can see through these that you are thinking a lot about, again, what you mentioned earlier, the mobility, right, or the animation.
Yeah.
And you're working through like a landing sequence,
Yeah.
or it taking off, for instance, and then the legs folded back.
Exactly.
And here it is in flight mode, and then here it is, coming into land, and how does it, walk? What's the
Yeah.
walk cycle?
Just really loose. Like, I mean, some of these, I think, yeah, these were actually, I believe these were some adhesive design sketches.
Well, those are top secret. Those are
Yeah,
really
yeah,
that's the whole secret right there.
NDA stuff.
Better
but
not
you,
show
you can
that.
see
Yeah.
production drawings there.
How long does a drawing like that, like this page, how long would that page take, for instance?
It depends. Like sometimes, like I'll just really just really get into the rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, 5-10 minutes. Sometimes some of these other ones take longer. But like I would say nothing over 20 minutes. Nothing under 5 minutes, I guess.
See, for me, it's like when I'm drawing with a brush pen, it's super fast.
Yeah.
Right. So it has a lot to do with the medium that I pick.
Yeah.
Pencil's going to be the slowest because I can erase it and noodle it and that sort of thing. And anything with a fine point starts to slow down.
Yeah.
A ballpoint or a super fine point high-tech pen. So if like I pick the medium that has like a blunter nub, right,
Yeah.
nib to it, it's like it only allows me to go so deep.
Exactly.
Right, with the detail, and that keeps me fast.
Yeah.
So that's why I like, like blocking in with a marker's quick.
Right, right.
You can't go too far. And then you pick out the details. Well, I got to say that just beautiful drawings and the range of style of the forms is what I find to be like one of the most impressive things. And the drawings are fantastic and very impressive. But for me as a designer, it's the range of silhouettes. It's the range of how you have the ability to take the same basic concept, which is these are all like a biped bot, it looks like, or a mech, and then now you're able to take, okay, well, they're all just going to be bipeds, but look, everyone is different.
Yeah.
And, and if we show the other page, you also see that they're also all different over there. So you just sort of endlessly go. And I know that that's really, and a big part of the job for a concept designer is styling.
Yeah.
And that's the job,
Yeah.
right? Infinite variations that all meet the same goal.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that that's what a lot of people don't understand, that's the design job is infinite variation.
Right.
Whereas the drawing job, say illustration, that's it. You make it look cool in that one view.
Yep.
Do a beautiful drawing with nice marks, right, on the page. That's a successful illustration.
Yeah.
But you didn't give them any options.
And
right?
I think just going back one page,
Go back.
like this, just sort of this suite of thumbnails. A lot of times, it's more important for me as a designer personally, because then like these, like you said, like this was originally meant to be, just sort of like a personal collection, right? So, just like with any I guess personal collection, like these aren't really meant for mass consumption, or it's not meant to be seen as like, hey, this is what the design is going to be like. But as a designer, you can say, hey, I see enough in it that I can make something from that,
Right.
and pull a final design and do a rendering on top of that.
Well, that's what we like to do on this channel, and what I like to do, and I share all sorts of stuff that I would never show to clients, and it's just because it's for educational purposes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's all has value, and other designers love these kinds of sketches.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that other designers that also draw, or illustrators that draw, love these kinds of drawings because they fill in all the blanks,
Exactly.
and they can see so much more in a sketch like this than they can in one like this where you've defined a lot of it.
Yep.
And there's a lot less for them to be, let's say, a creative partner
Yeah.
in the drawing. So I think it's a lot of the success of drawings are what you leave out.
Yeah. Like for example, like we could take, say even just, kind of for fun, like if we took this, I can pass it over to you, and you might come up with a completely different, interpretation of what I did here. So I think that's just sort of the fun of it.
But, those drawings work great for other designers and artists, but they don't work for marketing people.
No.
So,
no.
you need,
they
this
would not.
doesn't even, you've got to go put some value on that, scan it
Exactly.
in, and then, you show. So it's kind of like, you really need to know your audience, don't you?
Yeah.
And like what drawing you show to what person.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that means you need to be able to do everything. You can't just do only little thumbnails or only finished work.
Yeah.
Right. You
Yeah.
sort of have to
Definitely need that range, right? Like,
Yeah.
you should be able to start with the idea, develop that idea, and then just work it to completion. So.
Well, it's an amazing book. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, it's fantastic. So we're gonna be publishing a book with Darren through Design Studio Press soon, and we'll have a lot of these sketches. We'll have a lot of the sketches you didn't get to see on the left side of the book. And Darren's also going to record some videos for that book as well. So thanks a lot. And there's more, but we'll leave
Yeah.
that for another day. So let's find a nice page to finish on. There's probably a good one, good, nice thinking sketches.
Yeah.
So Darren, thanks a lot. The book is super inspirational. It got me back to drawing mechs. I just showed Darren my 5 pages I got started in my new sketchbook.
Yeah.
So
You gotta show those soon.
no, not yet, but eventually I will. So fantastic work. And so many of these, when I look at them, because I'm working on the how to render book right now, it's like, oh, I want to render that. I want to render that. And,
Dude, you should do it.
and when I look at
Do it.
them and I want to render them, that means that it's a really successful design, because I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it more realized,
Yeah.
right? All the volumes realized, and I'm excited to add more dimension to that,
Yeah.
and then get into the materials and put it in a setting.
Yeah.
I love the ones with people, because that immediately speaks of like a scenario or a narrative. Like, oh, what are these guys doing?
Yeah.
So that gets to be really, really fun. Oh, some tall ones, those are awesome
Yeah.
as well. Really fantastic range, beautiful draftsmanship. I love the loose, lively, wiggly lines. I think it's important. A lot of people don't realize that a wiggly line doesn't mean poor draftsmanship.
No.
And I think a lot of people think that, draftsmanship means that it has to be super clean, right? And
Yeah.
it's not actually that. You can have a lively, wiggly line on an accurately drawn structure,
Yeah.
and it gives it not only a sort of a worn, used appearance, right? Because those we sort of read as dents and things,
Yeah.
but it immediately gives it life.
Yeah.
And in a sketch like this that doesn't have a lot of value and lighting, you need other things to give it life.
Yeah.
And I know when I'm doing drawings, I add stuff to drawings just to make the drawing look more interesting.
Right. Right.
But if I was ever going to render it, that stuff wouldn't be there.
Right.
And so you can mislead yourself a little bit too. You can fall in love with technique, and then when you go render it, when that's stripped away, you can be disappointed.
Right.
So
There's something that I do, I do like using my tools when I'm doing more of a finished piece. But I mean, these are really just, like if you're just kind of having fun sketching, like these lines, like they're just there to put down an idea and say, hey, it could be cool, like what if, and gets the idea across, and that's.
well, I love that wiggly, lively line with, great structure and perspective and volumes that feel real and feel dimensional.
Cool.
So really fantastic balance.
Thank you.
Yeah, nicely done. So really excited to publish that work for you guys and share it with the rest of the world. And it's nice because to be able to hold it real size and
Nice, yeah.
with the real deal. It'll look a lot like this original sketchbook.
Yeah.
So Darren, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Look forward to sharing more of your work in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks. Thank you.
Have a great week, everybody.